It was just a normal Monday night in a normal pub in the Midlands. And yet, as we see in our story today, the most minor of arguments over a game of pool led to murder. Today's story begins in the Midlands city of Wolverhampton and the Market Tavern pub in Bilston. It's a standard town centre pub similar to ones where you live, which get busy at the weekends. It's located on the pedestrianised high street, frequented during daytime by shoppers from the nearby market, and it's an open plan pub comprising of a large single room with a raised area at the far end where the pool table and the darts board are located. We pick up the story on the Monday night of the 17th of August 2017. The pub was relatively busy, particularly around the pool table. This pub, like many others, had an unwritten policy of the winner stays on at the pool table, which means, if you're not familiar, that all challengers leave their money on the table until it's their turn to play the current champion. Maybe champion is a little strong, and incumbent is a better description. These games are usually played in a really good spirit, and on the table this evening, winning was a strong pool player, 46-year-old local carpenter and father of four, Lyndon Smith. His wife Sally worked behind the bar of the pub and he'd been eating up a bit of time just playing pool until Sally had finished with her shift. Now, I don't like to show a lack of respect for anyone in life and certainly on this channel, but Lyndon, he drank around 10 pints during the evening whilst intending to drive home. I know, right? It's hard to believe in 2025 that anyone thinks this is acceptable, but Lyndon seemingly did. That night he was playing pool with a group of men and they seemed to be enjoying themselves with lots of good natured chat and banter, despite Lyndon winning game after game. But the atmosphere soured when it was suggested that the rules should be changed to play for cash. Again, not something unusual, as many people like to play for a couple of pounds in a game to give it a bit more meaning. But this wasn't for Lyndon, and he made it very clear to the group this wasn't his thing and he wasn't interested. Then someone from the larger group called Lyndon a fool for his attitude to this, and Lyndon took great exception and he stormed out of the bar. But whereas for you or I that might just be the end of the night, Lyndon wanted revenge for the way he perceived he'd been treated, and he went off to his car, his Astra, to get a knife, and then he returned to the local area searching for the group who he felt had insulted him. Remember, this was a 47-year-old father of four children and a granddad. The man he was looking for, in particular, who had called him a fool, was Michael Keenan. He soon spotted Michael and the others in Church Street just outside the pub as they headed to a nearby taxi rank. But before he could get to Michael, another of the group, seeing what was happening, jumped in and struck Lyndon. This was 20-year-old John Joyce, and although John was by far the younger man and much taller at 6'5", he didn't realise that Lyndon was carrying a 14 centimetres knife and, according to witnesses, was storming around like a man possessed. Lyndon Smith stabbed John Joyce 4 times during the scuffle. John's brother, Martin Joyce, his uncle, James Madonna, as well as Michael Keenan, took some of the carpentry tools from the boot of Smith's Vauxhall Astra and gave chase to Smith, who had made off on foot from the angry group. You can picture the scene, can't you? Smith had a dodgy ankle which impeded his escape, and he could sense the 3 men, plus John Joyce, who despite being stabbed was also in pursuit, were catching him, and he knew it was just a matter of time before he was pulled down. So still brandishing the knife in his hand, Smith stopped running, and he turned to face the angry men who'd been chasing him. But this time, despite holding the weapon, he was quickly overpowered and the group seriously assaulted him. This wasn't just a few punches. One of the weapons used on him was a saw, and as he lay on the ground, he was kicked and he was stamped on. Fortunately for Smith, the emergency services had been called, and he was taken to hospital where he spent 2 weeks recovering from his injuries. But tragically, John Joyce was not so fortunate. And despite paramedics doing all they could to save him, his injuries were too severe. He had been stabbed 4 times, and although paramedics performed emergency CPR and used a defibrillator in the back of an ambulance. Despite all their efforts, he died at the scene. John Joyce was just 20 years old. John, who was originally from Ennis, which is about 15 miles north of Limerick and 150 or so miles southwest of Dublin, was found in the post mortem examination to have been killed by a stab wound to the chest. When he was arrested soon afterwards, Smith denied murder, claiming that he was acting in self defense. But what had caused Smith to react in the way he had? Well, he had a large number of excuses. Are you ready? He'd been very close to his mum and had suffered badly when she had died. He'd also been forced to move home twice quickly, which caused him stress. I get it. The first time was due to issues with neighbours in their new home, and the second time was as his wife had struggled to settle into their new location. She felt isolated. We mentioned earlier during the chase that he had a bad ankle. He'd actually broken it in two places in a nasty fall on the stairs of his home, which kept him away from his work at Wolverhampton Homes for a number of months. Then he'd experienced issues with his eldest daughter, who had returned to live with the couple after a fire in her home, bringing her two children, which of course was tough for all of them. And the whole situation was exacerbated when their youngest daughter fell pregnant at just 15. Smith told detectives how he turned to binge drinking to help him cope with everything that was going on around him. This caused further issues, of course, and Smith suffered also from an anxiety disorder diagnosed when he was 26, and he was also suffering from a depressive episode that had started in 2015 when his mum had died unexpectedly. And there was more. There were also some issues in his marriage. He admitted that he felt very unhappy and insecure, that his wife was working at the pub where she might meet somebody else and leave him. And there had also been violence in the marriage. So much so that in the January before the killing, Smith had been fined by the courts for his actions, although he and his wife were back together at the time of the pub attack. Smith told officers that he remembered the date of the domestic violence caused by him because it was the anniversary of his mum's death. As police officers looked more into the life of John Joyce, it transpired that he was actually on the run from the authorities in Ireland. In June 2017, just a couple of months before, the judge issued a bench warrant at Ennis Circuit Court for John Joyce's arrest after he fled the jurisdiction. In November 2007, John's older brother, Brian, faced trial for the crime that both he and John were accused of. In that trial, he admitted that both he and John were guilty of a dreadful attack which saw a 17-year-old man sustain slash wounds to his face and hands, requiring over 100 stitches, after being viciously assaulted at his home in the daytime by the Joyce brothers, who were armed with a carpet knife and blades. During the assault, the Joyce brothers also attacked his heavily pregnant partner, who was kneed in the stomach several times and, as she put it, put in fear for the welfare of her unborn child. In the witness box in November 2017, Brian Joyce said he wanted to apologise to his victim and his family. Asked why the attack took place, he told how he was in a psychiatric unit when he received a call from his brother John about what this man was saying about John on Facebook. Brian Joyce, a father of two, phoned the victim demanding the messages were all taken down. But when this didn't happen, well, Brian and his brother John went to the victim's home to exact revenge. In court, Joyce was repentant, saying, "I'm sad with what I've done and I want to apologise. I know I did something very wrong." He held a photograph of his brother John in his hands as he gave evidence along with holy beads, as he said that he and John were young and foolish. He said, "I was suffering with depression at the time, and it was myself and John who found my dad's body after he committed suicide." He added that his heart had been broken over the death of his brother John. For his crime, Brian Joyce was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. Let's return to the murder of John Joyce, and at the trial, which lasted for 2 weeks, Lyndon Smith denied the murder of John and a further 2 charges of wounding James Madonna and Michael Keenan, who also received stab wounds, with the intent of causing them grievous bodily harm. The QC for the prosecution told the jury that Smith's story was just a load of lies. He insisted that Smith had deliberately gone to get the knife and track down his former pool opponents with the one intention of causing serious harm for the perceived slight that he felt in the pub. The jury agreed, and at the conclusion of the trial at Birmingham Crown Court, that jury unanimously found him guilty of murder after deliberating their verdict over the space of 3 days. Lyndon Smith was told by the judge that he'd be sent to prison for life and would serve at least 22 years in prison. John Joyce's family, who had travelled from Ireland for the 2-week trial, wept openly in the public gallery as the verdict was announced. John's mum revealed her utter heartbreak in a statement read out to the court after her son's killer was sentenced. The short statement from Rose Joyce said, "No mother should have to bury their child. But to have a child taken away from you in such a cold and brutal way is just unbearable. Every day I have to get up and face another day without my baby boy. My heart is broken in pieces. He was everything to me, and now he is gone. The worst thing is, he died alone, and I wasn't there to hold his hand." So there we have it. Look, I don't mean to underplay what Smith had been through or his explanations of his stress. And we all react differently to when things go wrong in our lives, don't we? But I'm certain that many of you watching this have gone through much worse in the last 18 months and would never dream of such an extreme reaction to such a minor incident. Smith has got a long time in his cell to reflect on his actions. The victim of this attack today was John Joyce. We've heard that he was facing a very serious charge. No one excuses that behaviour, not for one moment. But he was just 20 years old, just starting out in his life. And due to the actions of one man in a pub in Wolverhampton on a Monday night, his future was cruelly taken away. Another totally pointless death, and so many lives ruined. And for what? I hope you have found this video of interest. If so, please do watch one of my others. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.